Welcome, everyone, to World Gone Weird. You know, the only place where we try to make sense of the daily dumpster fire. Or at least try to laugh at it before it consumes us all.
Hey folks, I'm hoping we can find a little light amidst the chaos today. Maybe even a silver lining or two. We'll see.
I'm here to ask the hard questions, the ones nobody else wants to touch. Prepare for some skepticism, folks, because I'm bringing it.
From my perspective, the world presents a series of testable hypotheses. Let's see if we can apply some scientific rigor to this madness, shall we?
All right, buckle up, buttercups, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. What are we diving into today?
I was thinking we could talk about the implications of global biometric data collection, really detailed stuff, and how that might impact international trade agreements in the future. Think about it. Governments and businesses vacuuming up all this personal information, it's got to have some unintended consequences down the line.
Unintended consequences? I'm already envisioning a dystopian future where your iris scan determines your credit score and your gait analysis dictates whether you can import goods. Is that where we are going?
It is plausible. Consider the proliferation of facial recognition technology. We can quantitatively assess the accuracy of these systems, but the ethical implications regarding bias and surveillance are complex and require rigorous scrutiny.
Oh, fabulous. So instead of just being tracked by our phones, we'll be tracked by our faces and our insides. Great. I'm just picturing a world where crossing the street without the proper biometric authorization gets you a drone strike. Haha, I'm only mostly joking. Mostly.
Okay, Sarah, maybe dial back the dystopia just a little. But seriously, think about the supply chain implications. If a company in one country is using ethically questionable biometric data practices, say forced labor tied to biometric identification, how does that affect trade agreements with countries that have stricter regulations?
Good point, Otto. It all comes down to leverage, doesn't it? If a country controls a vital resource or market, they can pretty much dictate the terms, ethical or not. Who is going to sanction China over forced Uyghur labor when they control the rare earth minerals market?
Precisely. The concentration of rare earth mineral production in China presents a clear example of resource control impacting trade. A quantitative analysis of global trade flows reveals the dependency of numerous industries on these resources, making sanctions potentially ineffective without alternative supply sources.
Okay, so trade wars based on ethical biometric data collection. Sounds thrilling. Add that to the list of reasons why I can't get my ethically sourced artisanal avocado toast on time. I see that being a real tipping point.
It's more than just avocado toast, Sarah. Think about medical devices, pharmaceuticals, critical infrastructure components. If those supply chains are tainted by unethical biometric data practices, it impacts everyone.
See, that's where I start worrying about escalation. If we're talking about access to vital medical supplies being used as leverage, you're practically inviting conflict. Nation A says, clean up your act on biometrics, or we cut you off from insulin. Nation B retaliates. Where does it end?
We can model potential conflict scenarios using game theory. The question is whether the benefits of ethical biometric data practices outweigh the potential for economic or even military retaliation. The variables are numerous and difficult to predict with certainty.
Oh, game theory. Always a fun time at parties. So basically, we're trading human rights for cheaper iPhones. Is that the long and the short of it?
It's not necessarily a direct trade, Sarah, but it's about power dynamics. Companies and governments might turn a blind eye to ethical violations in exchange for access to cheaper goods or resources, contributing to an environment where abuse thrives. Can't things move forward in a positive way?
And who gets to decide what's ethical anyway? One country's national security is another country's oppressive surveillance state. Is there any kind of global consensus on this stuff?
The absence of a universally accepted ethical framework is a significant obstacle. International law is often based on treaties and agreements, which are subject to interpretation and enforcement challenges. The effectiveness of any global standard on biometric data hinges on widespread adoption and consistent application.
So we're basically stuck in a Wild West situation with biometric data. Every government for themselves, every company for themselves, all while vacuuming up our fingerprints and DNA samples. It's like a bad sci-fi novel.
There are organizations trying to establish standards and promote responsible practices, but it's an uphill battle. Things like GDPR in Europe are pushing for increased privacy, but even those are hard to enforce globally.
GDPR. Another bureaucratic headache. It seems like every regulation just creates more loopholes for the corporations to exploit. Can't trust them, you know?
The effectiveness of GDPR can be empirically tested by analyzing data breaches and privacy violations before and after its implementation. However, attributing causality to a single regulation is challenging due to confounding variables.
Okay, enough doom and gloom. What if we use this biometric data for good? Like solving crimes, tracking down missing persons, or, I don't know, perfecting the ultimate personalized pizza? Is that even possible?
Those applications are definitely possible, and there's potential for real benefits. But even then, you have to be incredibly careful about bias and security. Imagine a facial recognition system that misidentifies people of color at a higher rate than white people. That's a recipe for disaster.
Or what about pre-crime scenarios using biometric data to predict who might commit a crime? Suddenly, you're living in Minority Report. And who is going to define what crime even is?
Predictive policing algorithms, based on biometric and behavioral data, have been shown to perpetuate existing biases, leading to disproportionate targeting of certain communities. A scientifically sound approach requires continuous monitoring and rigorous testing for fairness and accuracy.
So basically, we're just handing over the keys to our own cages, wrapped up in the shiny packaging of convenience and security. I am loving this future. I really am.
It's a question of control, right? Who controls the data? Who controls the algorithms? And how do we ensure transparency and accountability?
And what happens when that data is hacked? Or sold to the highest bidder? Or used by a government to suppress dissent?
Data breaches are an increasing concern. Quantifying the potential economic and social costs requires assessing the value of the compromised data, the likelihood of misuse, and the effectiveness of security measures. And, to a large extent, this depends on the nation, the culture, the law.
Fantastic. So, our entire lives neatly packaged and ready to be weaponized. Can we at least get a discount on identity theft insurance?
Look, there's potential for good here, but we need to be really careful about how we implement these technologies. We need strong regulations, independent oversight, and a public that's informed and engaged.
Informed and engaged? Most people can barely keep up with their TikTok feeds. Are they really going to understand the complexities of biometric data privacy? Are they ready to think about the ethical consequences?
Public awareness campaigns and educational initiatives are crucial, but their effectiveness is difficult to measure. Quantifying the level of public understanding and influencing attitudes requires sophisticated social science research methodologies.
Okay, so we need to educate the masses, regulate the corporations, and somehow convince governments not to use our faces to track our every move. Sounds totally achievable. I'm feeling so optimistic right now. Not.
It's a challenge, no doubt. But we can't just throw our hands up and say it's hopeless. We need to start having these conversations, demanding more transparency, and pushing for ethical frameworks. Or do we just accept this as our new overlords and move on?
Easier said than done, Otto. The powerful interests are already deeply invested in this technology. Who is going to hold them accountable?
Accountability mechanisms, such as independent audits and whistleblower protections, are essential, but their effectiveness depends on political will and enforcement capacity. Analyzing the impact of these mechanisms requires careful examination of legal frameworks and regulatory practices.
So, more bureaucracy. Great. Just what we need. More forms to fill out while our faces are being scanned and sold on the dark web. Wonderful.
It's not just about bureaucracy, it's about creating a system that prioritizes human rights and ethical considerations. We need to think about the long-term consequences of these technologies, not just the short-term profits.
Long-term consequences. Most politicians are thinking about the next election cycle, not the next generation. I don't see any real leadership on this issue. Do you?
The absence of long-term planning is a systemic problem in many political systems. Analyzing the time horizons of policy decisions and identifying factors that promote or hinder long-term thinking is a critical area of research.
Okay, so to recap, we're all doomed. Our biometric data will be used against us. The corporations will profit. The governments will spy. And I'll probably still get the wrong order at Starbucks. Is that about right?
That's a bit pessimistic, Sarah, but yes, there are serious risks. But there are also opportunities to use these technologies for good if we can get our act together.
Color me skeptical, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. Show me a world where biometric data is used to empower individuals, not control them. That's the future I want to see.
From a scientific perspective, it is incumbent upon us to develop methods for evaluating the societal impact of these technologies, identifying potential biases, and promoting ethical frameworks that prioritize human well-being.
Well, that's slightly less depressing. Thanks, Jesus. I guess. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go hide under a rock before my smart fridge starts judging my dietary choices.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. But hopefully we've given you some food for thought, maybe some ethically sourced food for thought. Keep questioning, keep engaging, and stay weird.
And don't trust everything you read on the internet, especially anything about biometric data or artisanal avocado toast.
Until next time, remember to apply critical thinking and skepticism to all claims and seek evidence-based solutions to the challenges facing our world.
Later, losers. Try not to get your DNA stolen.